last time we kind of dived into a little bit of the Enneagram and things like that. But I was hoping that we could just jump right into it today, and it's going to be something similar, but I think the conversation is going to be more geared around, what do we want to say? The hidden internal logic, right? I think that's how you phrase it, about how things feel so right and we follow that direction. And it's almost like we're automated to do stuff, but is that the right thing to do? Because we kind of lose our choices. So let's have a conversation about that.
That sounds great. I love this conversation. I love this topic. And this is what you're just referring to. This internal logic is actually what's operating underneath our awareness, typically, until we bring it to awareness. But it is really what drives the patterns of our lives. The emotional patterns, the behavioral patterns, the mental patterns. So it's this internal logic. And when I finally got it, when I was finally able to put this internal logic together for myself, and then wrote about it, but then I started recognizing this makes so much sense. So how we show up in life, how we think about life, makes so much sense, because our internal logic is saying that's how you do life, that's how you do it. And so we don't even bring it to question, and we need to. I mean, it helps to examine it, because then we have more choice in our life. And as long as we're on automatic, we really don't have that choice.
But is that such a bad thing? I mean, there are people who make bad choices, but they're living this life that's, like we were saying, it's kind of automatic. So they're just going about doing things and they're happy.
They might be happy. They might feel happy, which I think is a little different than feeling joy and feeling like a deeper connection with oneself. Now, a lot of people we're all on automatic at certain times, in the day, as we go through our anything that's a routine that we have, that it kind of gives us a sense of place, and okay, this is how, when I get up in the morning, and these are my routines, and, I work out, or, I drink that glass of water, and, and I'm kind of hitting on myself to kind of wake up my body. I mean, that can be also become conscious. It's like, oh, this is good morning. This is good morning. I'm starting to let the day in. I'm starting to let my life in. But when we're on automatic, we don't let too much in. We just kind of go along. And, that's okay. That's okay. It's just typically not very satisfying on a continual basis. It's not sustainable when we're on automatic. So let me give you an example of part of the logic.
Yeah.
I think that might help. So actually each of the 9 points on the Enneagram has a different internal logic. It's set up the same way, but what we're looking for changes. So what is it that's going to make me feel okay about myself? So let's just say and I'll just name some of the points so that people might recognize this for themselves. Let's just say I'm in the 3 territory. It's called the achiever. Okay, and so I wake up thinking about what my goals are going to be for the day, and am I going to reach my goals? And if I don't get through those goals until by the time I go to bed, I'm probably kind of beating myself up and thinking I'm a slackard, because that's what I'm seeking. And I'm seeking those goals are intended to give me a sense that other people are appreciating me, other people are seeing that I'm productive or seeing that I'm successful, and that feels like really important to me. And yet not, if I'm goal after goal after goal after goal and thinking that's going to satisfy me, it might satisfy me for, 5 minutes, a half hour, couple hours, but then what's the next one? What's the next goal? And I can give you an example.
Well, before we do that, I was wondering, because that's not an automatic behavior type of thing, though, right? I mean, this is where we're actually seeking out something to do to satisfy ourselves, to hopefully satisfy somebody else. Is that because I would think that the automatic kind of behavior is like we're saying, you get up in the morning, you say hello, and you just go about your day because it's the same old day. And then at the end of the day, you go to bed, and the next day you wake up and you do the same thing all over again without having any goals or anything to meet.
Well, if a person is dominant in this number 3, the achiever, that's how life works. That is automatic. Chuck.
Okay.
That's the automatic. Now, for somebody else, let's say, take someone who's dominant in 6. They might be looking for, am I going to be safe today? Is my family going to be safe? How do I create safety? Or I'm going to keep my eyes open for anything that could look like it could be dangerous. That's automatic behavior. And does that land for you? Does that make sense? There's something that we're seeking to feel like, okay, I can be okay if I'm safe.
I'd like to simplify it for the audience as far as, how do we recognize these things as being automatic as opposed to these are things that I am consciously trying to make a decision of. For me, automatic would be in the military, and you're getting up when you're told to get up, and you're just going, you've got this regiment and you're just following that day in and day out. And then if I was to add in my own thought of, no, I'm not going to get up at 4 a.m. I'm going to get up at 4:10 and I'm going to skip breakfast. Now I've gone off the automatic. But how do I know that I am on that autopilot? Is there a simple way to one can go, oh, I'm on autopilot. I need to make a change.
Sometimes we have to kind of be shaken awake to really, but I think this is a clue. What do I wake up in the morning thinking about? And am I waking up every morning kind of thinking the same thing? Then there's probably, and that's automatic. What you're describing is also a different version of automatic. I just don't even think about anything, and I just get up and I go about my day. But there's something that's on the outside. Mm-hmm. What's going on on the inside? And it might be, heck, I just want to be comfortable. I don't want anything to distress me out. I don't want anything to make life difficult. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to make anybody else uncomfortable. That is an automatic pattern. That's part of this internal logic for a different point on the Enneagram. Okay, so it's not necessarily what it looks like on the outside. I mean, we can look to people who are really visible in the world. People who, we see a lot, like if we're watching television or on news, and it's like the same thing is happening kind of over and over and over and over. That's actually an automatic pattern. It may look like if I, talk with people who are in the entertainment field, for example, and let's say they feel like they always have to be up, no matter what, because the cameras are going to be on them someplace. That's kind of, they're attuned to that. Media's around. They can't get by with much of anything without being seen. And so always being up, they think they always have to be up and maybe entertain others. That's their job, is to kind of entertain others. It becomes a role, but it's also part of an internal mechanism and internal logic. So as much as we're seeking something, let's say I'm one who has to be upbeat, inspiring, enthusiastic, entertaining others, and if I'm not, something bad's going to happen. So part of this internal logic is not only what we're seeking to be okay, but it's also what I'm avoiding, because that is just off the radar for me. It's a very dangerous thing to avoid, to get caught in the opposite of what I'm seeking. So for the entertainer to actually have some downtime and allow their feelings to come in, and maybe they're grieving something. What about people who always have to be up and they live in LA, and the huge, massive, unfathomable loss, and to be able to actually grieve that might not be allowed in their psyche, because that feels like a dangerous place to go. It feels like, as part of this internal logic, if I allow my feelings to come up, they may just swallow me up.
Could that be along the lines of an unfamiliar feeling, something that's not familiar to you because you're so used to doing whatever else it is?
Yeah, it's like, what will happen to me? That's a really good question, Chuck. It's like that. It can feel like that's the unknown, and what could possibly happen. Let's take what we were just talking about, a person that's really goal oriented, and goal after goal after goal, and then they're exhausted, right? And no longer, maybe they can't perform at such a high level, and they're exhausted and they feel like a failure. That's not acceptable, to feel like a failure. So I've got to rub up again to be able to get on board with the next goal, and produce. So, that's just, one of the 9 orientations, 9 versions of the inner logic. And it's the question I ask is, what if we could catch ourselves in the act of doing what we do over and over and over, and thinking that that's the right thing to do? I don't know any other way of being but to do that. I consider this looking at, how do we do life?
Okay.
How do I do life? And what if some of the ways that I'm doing life and repeating the same thing over and over is wearing me down? It's exhausting me. It's truly unsatisfying, but it's satisfying for a little bit, But then it doesn't. That satisfaction is the ego satisfaction. But what's going on inside? What's happening in my heart? What's happening in my soul? What's happening to my spirit when the ego is always in charge? But what if I could catch myself? If I became aware of what that inner logic is for myself, if I could be, then I would kind of know what to watch for. So that's, we really have to have, one of the things that the Enneagram reveals to us, it kind of points, it's like a mirror, it's like a mirror. It holds a mirror up to us. It says, hey, look at this. And it's really quite astonishing how accurate it can be. And it shows me my inner logic. It's like, oh my gosh, I thought that was just me. You mean there's a different choice to be had here? I don't always have to follow that internal logic.
It sounds like we have to learn to give ourselves permission to make change or whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, we didn't really choose to have an inner logic. We didn't choose to have our same these patterns repeating over and over, because those just get in the way of really our truer nature and our creativity and our ability to respond creatively to what's, to possibilities, to opportunities, to fulfill our our real potential to connect with our with love and our wholeness. You know, I mean, there's so much more to us than the patterns. The patterns are what the ones that no longer work for us are the ones that, if we can see them clearly enough, to begin to interrupt them and give ourselves permission. You're absolutely right. Like, and really be kind to ourselves, because we didn't choose. We didn't choose we didn't choose the patterns. We didn't choose the internal logic that I'm aware of. You know, maybe before we were born, something happened, but we didn't choose it consciously. And I think it's one of the reasons why, we're here on the earth, is to learn more about ourselves and become more conscious. And if we're interested in that, and so that we can provide our best contribution that will really that is tied to what lights us up. It's not to do something that's drudgery, but if there's something that lights us up, that's a gift, and the world needs those gifts.
I can see where using people that are in front of the camera or whatever it might be often, and we think that they're successful and they are projecting this success, but inside they feel that they are missing something. Because I kind of liken it to not me being famous or anything, but liken it to where I've gotten things done, and people might say, "Oh wow, you did this, you did that," but inside there's still something that I'm missing. Does that fall into place with what we're talking about? Just that internal feeling of I don't like using this word, but I don't feel whole.
Yeah.
There's something missing.
There's something missing. There's something that feels off. There's something that may feel like I'm broken, or something needs to be fixed inside. And so, we can get this for those people who resonate with this particular inner logic, that needing to be seen as successful, for example, and then not getting it, feeling like I said, lacquered. I have so many friends and clients, colleagues, who have shared this with me. It's like this. I feel like I'm a failure. I feel like I'm worthless. Basically, my worth comes from being productive, being success, and for other people to see my success, and yet underneath all of that, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because it doesn't feel like I'm enough for just who I am.
But there can be those who are successful that feel that same emptiness, right? That void of some sort.
That's exactly right. And, eventually, when somebody's at the top of their game, and I mean, they're all over the place, you just see them. They're at the top of their game, and they're so maybe popular, and they look so successful, and maybe that there's wealth, or, the goodies that come with all that. Generally, at some point in their life, it's going to not work at all. And whether it's, all of a sudden I'm not somebody else has become more popular than me. Somebody else is rising now. My star is falling a little bit, It could be that's happening, or it could be, unfortunately, a lot of times there's an illness or an accident or somebody in the family. There's something that kind of can jar people to say, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And I feel this sense of emptiness, or this sense of that I'm missing something, kind of comes into play. And then I start getting curious about myself. And, oftentimes that's with help. But I start getting curious about what else is going on here. And what I'd want to say is that person doesn't need to be fixed. There's nothing to fix. It's more coming back into contact, with oneself. Let me share like another kind of aspect of the inner critic, or I'm sorry, the inner logic, which involves the inner critic, but the inner logic for another point on the Enneagram. Let's say, somebody is just such a caregiver and they're always helping people. And if they're not helping people, they feel guilty. So the helping people in order to feel connected, in order to feel like to get love. I want to be loved, and so the way I get love is to help people. And I'm really generous, and that's how I see myself, because if I'm not generous, then I feel selfish. And this is the person that always has their hand in the air first. They're at the parent meeting. Hey, we need a volunteer to do ha ha ha, or they're in a church group, or they're in a, whatever, neighborhood group, civic group. And I've actually taught clients to sit on their hands. I mean, like it's like that, it's like, oh my gosh, it's just so powerful, having my hand in the air. And to recognize that's an automatic pattern. Not just, that's a metaphor, the hand in the air, but the pattern of always looking at other people's lives. And I'm not actually in contact with my own life. I'm more concerned about everybody else than me. And
can I throw a little question? Maybe it's a twist of some sort, but can an addict, or does an addict of some sort fall into this?
You're brilliant. It's we could look at this inner logic as an addiction.
Okay.
I've always felt this, and one of my teachers, Don Richard Riso, the late Don Richard Riso, would say, our greatest addiction is our personality, because we hold on to it thinking that that's who we are. So yes, people who have different addictions definitely can fall into, besides maybe the chemical or biological addiction, that oftentimes that addiction is created by the internal logic, and trying to follow that logic without realizing that that's what it is. It's like, no, it's just what I have to do. That's who I am. That's who I am, Chuck. I just do it this way. I just do life this way. And so, if I'm a person that has a lot of power, and I love control. I want to control other people, and one of the ways that I can control other people, there could be an addiction part of that. Like power is addictive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when I am in expressing, when I'm in charge and I'm demanding certain things be the way I want them to be, and then somebody says, "No, wait, I'm not doing it." Like that totally challenges that inner logic, and you can see how a person could either go into rage, or they might back up and say, "Oh, wait a minute, I didn't know it was that offensive? I didn't realize I was coming across so strong." So that could be kind of a wake up to that pattern, that logic. But that logic leads to, I'm okay if I'm in control, and if I'm not in control, I'm not okay, and it can be devastating. And when people are not following their inner logic, they're going, it's kind of in the opposite direction. It can be, for some people, really hard, really hard to do the opposite. I think I might have mentioned that, my inner logic in the nine space is wanting to keep harmony, wanting everybody to be okay, wanting to not cause problems, not upset people. And so the opposite of that is what I wanted to avoid is any kind of confrontation, disagreement, because that feels like I'll be cut off. And I want to be connected. I don't want to be cut off. And so to learn to go in the opposite direction, I don't know if I mentioned this, but what I did was I took mediation classes and sat in the middle of people confronting one another and was mediating the conversation. I had to sit there, and boy, was that uncomfortable. That was really uncomfortable. And you know what? It didn't kill me. It didn't kill me. And actually, it started to, like, I can be in a place with conflict. I don't prefer it. I don't love it, but I can do it. And that gives me choice. Because if something is, if something is happening that I really can't tolerate, I really can't stomach, then I can say, I have a difference of opinion here. Let's talk about this. And it might not be in your face, punching somebody in their face, but just to be able to speak up and say, this is not healthy, or this is not good, or what are you talking about? Really questioning the other person. So in that way, it allowed me to be more in integrity with what's true for me.
It also sounds like to me that one should lead or follow their heart more often than with their mind. Is that a good way of thinking about this?
Well, this is both mental, it's behavioral, it's energetic, mm-hmm. And whenever we can drop into our heart, that's a really good thing. Now, if it could be that our heart is filled with envy.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so can we recognize what's happening in my heart? And that can be a part of a pattern. Some people who are dominant, in certain types, can have a lot of envy of other people. What they look at and say, gosh, why are they so successful? That should be me being that successful. Or, why are they so special? I'm the one that's special. And so, but to recognize that, envy is this automatic emotion that pops up. So how?
Right, sorry for the older men out there, but this goes for you envious when a 75-year-old is with a 25-year-old, because 5 years from now, when he's 80 and she's 30, he's going to wake up and realize, what am I doing? This is not where my heart, or this is not where I should be. I was putting on a facade. I was putting on this image. That's the thing that just popped into my head.
Yeah, that's a good one. And a lot of times that will happen. It's like, as you say, it's like you wake up in the morning and go, whose life am I living here, right?
Yes.
And so we're not living our life when we're on this automatic logic, and so if I can catch that logic, and I've got the logic really written up in in the Deep Living book in quite a bit of depth, but I've got it, if I call it a triangle of identity. It's like what in the underneath your personality, it's like the triangle of identity is, we can think about, on one corner is, this is what's going to make me happy. If I just do this, if I just reach this goal, if I just make people comfortable, if I'm just helping others, if I'm just understanding this better, it's like, if this happens, then if this happens, I'll be okay. If the opposite happens, I'm probably going to die. I mean, you kind of feel that way, And then, in the middle here is like, well, but this is who I am. I'm this person that always is seeking this. Well, no. So this guy that wakes up and say, wait a minute, I'm not being true to myself, or the woman who is in a corporate position and is treated terribly, and she, goes home at night and starts, rather than having that extra drink. She says, wait a minute. I need to look at what's going on here. I'm not in alignment. I'm not being treated with respect. So I'm not treating myself with respect as long as I keep doing this, And so much of this is about reclaiming who we are, and our hearts are, really central to reclaiming who we are, paying attention to the heart that's tender, that's compassionate, that can tell you the truth. The envious heart isn't the truth. Mm-hmm. But how do I come back and just put my fingers on my chest, in the center of my chest and my heart, and breathe in and say, I'm here with you.
And a lot of this can go back to the Enneagram and understanding that, and then understanding ourselves to help ourselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the reason I think I mentioned this to you before. I wouldn't spend a minute on the Enneagram if it wasn't a body of transformation. And the transformation comes from first seeing what we're maybe most familiar with, and having that mirror shine on us, like, oh, this is how I do life, and what's going on underneath, what's driving that, and now what? Now that I have more information, now that I'm coming into contact with the impact it's had, the consequences of my life, Chuck, I am choosing something different, and I don't know what that is, but I can trust that it will come. I will know that there's something else here, and my heart, my spirit, my soul, I can. It's already here within me. I just have to pause long enough and give myself permission to ask myself, what is working and what isn't working in my life? And the Enneagram can really just clarify that so much more quickly. I mean, I would never have gotten to the point of recognizing, oh, I just want comfort. Well, yeah, doesn't everybody? Well, no, not necessarily. I was working with a nonprofit team, and the executive director was really upset with her team because she didn't think they were goal-driven enough. And she said, would you come in and do an Enneagram workshop? And I said, well, of course, I'd be happy to. And so we're in the middle of this workshop, and here we are, we're back on the 3. I'm not picking on 3, it's just that, it's because this is such a big deal in our society, right? And she was going, well, when I was explaining the 3 and we were talking about it, she says, well, everybody has goals. Isn't that how people live, to have goals? And there's just something wrong with them because they don't have the goals that I want them to have, right? And I said, no, not everybody has the same orientation toward goals. And she was shocked, because what happens is, if other people don't want what we think is important to be okay, and they're not doing it the way we would want them to do, the way we would do it, we think there's something wrong with them.
We do, yeah.
Right? And so we don't see that, oh, they have their own way of looking at life and their own inner logic that is giving them this automated message to, move in this direction, move toward what you think is going to make you okay. This is very much, I also call this the ego code, and it's very much in alignment with the DNA code, the genetic code. It's like I can't tell what my genetic code is, by just looking at myself. I mean, I can say, well, yeah, I look like so-and-so, but, what's my DNA code? It's unconscious to me. The genetic code, which is related to the inner logic, is the same way. It's like, well, I don't even know what to look for. So this work with the Enneagram helps us know where to look.
Mm-hmm. I like to say we should all, or maybe I shouldn't say we should all, but a good idea would be to stop for a second, pause for a moment, ask yourself the question, and give yourself the permission. And those four things to me, I think, would help out many people, or at least I can feel that it would help me. And I think that big one that you had said it several times is pause. We need to pause for a moment.
Yeah.
And that's why I say stop, then pause. Stop just takes a second, but you need to stop and then pause.
And pause and pause. And then consciously pause, not just pause and, but pause, quiet, silence. What's that like? Silence. And that's not something that's really built into our culture.
Right, it's not.
It's not. There's this music group I go to on Saturday mornings. It's not automatic, but we almost always go. But I love it. It's just this creative, wonderful energy. On a Saturday morning, people go in their jeans but classically trained musicians, but they're doing this wild music. But in the middle of the music, they have a poetry reading for a few minutes, and then they have let's celebrate 2 minutes of silence.
And it's so hard for people to do.
Yeah, it's so hard. You hear this kind of shuffling around. Now, the people that go, for the most part, are really like used to it and have quieted down. A couple of weeks ago, I was there, and there was somebody new there, and she's to her neighbor, trying to be really quiet, because it's so hard, and yet, boy, it just is like this. Can be so refreshing, but we have to build the muscle for it. It's like any other muscle. We build the muscle for silence, being with yourself silently. And I'll add non-judgmentally.
Yeah,
non-judgmentally.
And I know it's that 2 minutes seems like an eternity to so many people, but it's really just a moment in time. It's just a short moment.
Yeah. And you don't have to start with 2 minutes. You can start with 30 seconds.
If we can't do 30 seconds, there's something wrong with us. No.
Well, listen, there's a group from the East Coast that come to this. I'm in the Southwest, but people that have moved to this area, and they have asked, could it be like 30 seconds? So, well, what's wrong is that we're also in a culture that doesn't honor silence, Chuck. And so we've, it's almost a radical act to say, guess what? 30 seconds of silence, a minute of silence, 2 minutes of silence, just breathing, listening to it's not that silent when you're listening to your breath and following your breath. There's action, and there may be things going on inside of you that you haven't even paid attention to.
Well, I think, for those who, well, you could live anywhere, but I'm just going to use, if you live in the rural area, maybe on the countryside, how many times have we really just sat down on the bench and just listen, not say anything, but listen. And there's so much more that you can hear if you do that.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
I was just going to add one last thing. What's funny, though, is we talk about the silence and not speaking and just laying there and listening to the sounds. And interestingly enough, to me, I know people who will go on a beach vacation. They lay out on the beach and they don't want to be talked to anything, and they listen and they feel so much more relaxed.
Yeah.
You can do that anywhere.
Yeah. And nature is such a balm for us if we can do it in nature and just, amidst the trees, wherever you might be, or I might be going out into, a field of grasses, and just being in that, but wherever you can touch nature by a creek. I grew up on a farm, and we had a little creek going through our property, and it was like that was solace for me. That little creek, or maybe there's a river, or whatever you're close to, because also nature doesn't lie. It really doesn't, and it goes through seasons. Where it's thriving, growing, becoming maybe greener, and it goes through another season where it starts to lose its leaves, starts to turn yellow and brown, and then it has that quiet time where it's just in the ground. And what happens when your garden goes into this hibernation? What do you think's going on underneath the surface of the ground? Something is happening. There's rest. The seeds are resting before they can start to sprout again. That's nature's lesson. Let yourself be nurtured in your own soil, of your own way of being, your own soul, your spirit. One of the things I've said that I've just have found to be true is that our souls actually want quiet. Our deeper nature wants quiet so we can connect with it. But the personality is noisy, no matter what. The personality is always doing its thing. And the inner logic helps explain why it's doing its thing. And so I say that actually the personality goes almost diametrically opposite of what our soul wants. Our personality is going this way. Our soul actually would like a little more of this over here,
Yeah.
It's really quite humbling to recognize that we dismiss the inner world so easily.
Yes. Roxanne Howe Murphy, can you let people know where they can go to find out more information about you and about the conversation we're having now and Enneagrams and everything?
Sure. I'd be happy to. Well, the books, Deep Living with the Enneagram, Recovering Your True Nature, and Underneath Your Personality, Discover Greater Well-Being through Deep Living with the Enneagram, are, of course, available. You can ask your independent bookstore to order if they don't have it in stock. And you can also get it on Amazon and other online bookstores, but Amazon, fairly easy to find there. To learn more about my work, it's Roxanne Howe Murphy.com. I just forgot. I'm going to give you a shorter link. Go to deepwithin.co. Deepwithin.co will take you to my site, and you can download a reading from Underneath Your Personality, which is the latest book, for free. And then if you go to deeplivinglab.org, DeepLivingLab.org, deeplivinglab.org. Sign up there, and you can get some readings from the Deep Living with the Enneagram book. And see, the Deep Living Lab is actually the nonprofit that provides offerings based upon, mostly on my work.
Gosh, this has all been really fantastic information for all of us out here. And I just want to give everybody a reminder. Remember, stop, pause, ask a question, and give yourself permission. That's my saying. I
love it.
It's it will work for me, and that's what I need to continue to do and do more often.
I'm so glad that it's serving you, and I my great hope would be that this conversation and this work will really serve your followers, your listeners, your viewers. Chuck, I think our world needs to kind of have a readjustment in terms of where we are putting our attention, and come back, reclaim yourself. Otherwise, whose life are you living? If it's on this automatic, you're not living your own life, and you can. You can. And any way that we can support that, that's my great wish for you all.
Well, Roxanne Howe Murphy, thank you very much for conversation today.
I really enjoyed it. Appreciate you so much, Chuck, and thank you.
You're welcome.